Yeah, very good morning to everyone, and I think I'd like to, on behalf of Tsinghua University, welcome everyone to this beautiful campus. It's quite hot. I think some people from Brazil would be quite familiar with this kind of weather. I'm from Singapore, so quite normal for me, actually. You know, we have a humid, hot weather, but it's a very beautiful day, and I think I'm sure some of you will enjoy not just the campus, but Beijing and China, and hope that you have a good time here, as well as a good learning experience, make many friends, and then when you return to your home countries, have fond memories of your time here. So once again, I'd like to warmly welcome you. What I'm going to do today is to share with you a little bit about medicine and about the future. I think all of you, some of you, let me just have a show of hands. Anyone, have you ever thought about wanting to be a doctor? Anyone here? Let me just see. Okay, great, okay, yeah, very good, okay. And any of you thought maybe I'll go into science or biomedical science or pharmaceutical science? Anyone else? Yeah, okay, great. Yeah. So I think that's all quite related, and I will speak a little bit about some of the major developments and trends and how we think about the future, right? I think a lot of you here, 40 years ago, I went for summer school. I went to Sydney at that time, and I was inspired by, old people like me at that time talking about the future, and those leave a very good impression, and I hope that some of these time here will leave that kind of impression, because it will guide your careers as you go along, because it's, you go back to your study and you get very focused on your current work, right, your current study. But I want you to be just a little bit relaxed, even of those of you who are not interested in medicine or life science or pharmaceutical science. Open up your mind a little bit, because everybody will need good health. You are at some stage need to see a doctor, and you are at some stage wonder, why is the hospital like this? Why is the doctor telling me something? And why am I getting treatment like this? So you'll be affected in any society, in any stage, even not now, but when you're a little bit older. So the idea is, how do we prepare ourselves for that kind of future? This is a photograph I took a couple of years ago, just here. I'm sure you know, so it's my own photograph. I'm sure you have many good memories there, and it's not from the internet. And when I came, I think the idea was, are we able to do a medical school in Tsinghua? Of course, we are over here now, as you are aware, this is also summer. How do we really prepare ourselves thinking about that kind of future? So I'm going to give you really 4 segments of the talk. 3 segments. If I have time, I'll share a little bit of my own personal segment. The first is, why do we need physicians? Why do we need to train doctors? Can we get by without doctors, right? A few of you are doctors here. Is that enough, right? The second is, what do we want our future-focused physicians to be? What do you want your doctor to be? If some of you have seen your doctor, sometimes you wonder, could it be better? How do we prepare? Because, the training now is preparing for the future. Then, of course, understanding why and what you need to know. How do we do it, right? What am I thinking about? Now, I'm not saying that I am able to create the entire future, but I would at least like my faculty to think about it and to have that vision as we transform the curriculum. And you have a good chance here at Tsinghua. I'm sure some of you are aware we are one of the most forward-looking universities. We don't, China's development has been full of new things, and we want to do that. And I would say that, some of you maybe would be part of this transformative curriculum at some stage. Then I'll talk to you a little bit about my own journey. As I said, 40-something years ago, if you're 17 or 18 or 19 or 20, that's about me 40 years ago. And I'm kind of like thinking, maybe share a little bit of my own journey coming over here, to Tsinghua, after many countries actually outside. All right, so let's get started, right? Why do we need doctors, and what are the problems are we trying to solve? So let's say if I ask you, you want to be an engineer, right? You want to be a structural engineer, let's say, right? What's a structural engineer? What does it solve? What problems is there? You need to know that. So if I said, you want to be a doctor, what do you want to solve? A lot of people say, I want to help people. I mean, you can help people in anything. Am I correct? All right. I want to cure illness. Does doctors really cure illness? What does a doctor do? So we need to think a little bit about this. So without understanding why, then we don't need. So let me just ask a little bit of hands here, right? I want to make this as interactive as possible. What are the problems doctors are trying to solve? I mean, what are the problems we face in China or globally, right? In Brazil, in many different countries here. What are the problems? Just give me a few big trends, and then I will tell you the answer. But anyone? What problems are there? Yes, this. Okay, so that's a very important thing. That's an existential threat for everybody, right? I would say that there are many threats. You hear a little bit about climate. That's existential, right? You can say some of the older folks, we said, it's not going to affect me, right? I'll be dead before climate change happens, right? But you all won't be, because you are facing it. You're almost facing it every few years, essentially, right? Okay, so aging is a second demographic big shift. In China, the reproductive rate is how much? Anyone knows? Anyone knows? The reproductive rate means the replacement rate, right? You know that if you have parents, you need 2, right? That's 2.0. In fact, 2.1 is the ideal reproductive rate, right? With growth and so forth. What's China's reproductive rate? Anyone knows? It's about 1, right? It's about 1 hovering. Some countries like Korea has gotten to 0.9. In other words, every parents have 0.9 children. Can you imagine? Not even 1, right? China has 1. That's not enough. Many countries, I think, I'm not sure what's Brazil or other countries. I know in Western Europe it's not so bad. But many countries, right? Singapore, where I'm from, is 1.2, right? So in other words, you're going to have older people and you have fewer younger people. In other words, all of you are going to have to provide for a future where you're going to be supporting. If you have 1 here, you're supporting 4 people. You're actually maybe supporting more than that, right? 2 parents, and if the 2 sets of grandparents are alive, you're supporting this as well. It's not that simple. So that's 1, right? So aging population means people are living longer, a lot of problems. What else? What else is the health world facing? Anybody? Besides aging, anyone? Okay, so yeah, cardiovascular, heart problems, whatever. Just have to be careful about diet. Beijing has a lot of good food, quite saltish, so you'll be a little bit careful, right? If you take too much bubble tea here, there's many of this Haiti and everything, you're in trouble, essentially, right? Sugar is another thing. So in other words, chronic disease is another one, right? Previously, there's no such thing. 20, 30 years ago in China, very healthy diet, I would say. You know what I mean? Very bland but healthy diet, right? Rice, meat, vegetables, now we're not there. Okay, so chronic disease, aging, they come together. It's very challenging, right? So everybody faces this. Yes? Yeah, okay, very good. So in other words, health is not just about you, right? It's not just the individual, right? It's not just, do you have heart disease? Do you have some kind of surgery that you need, right? It's the whole picture. It's mental, the society, right? There's now more, I would say, societal problems, and that's part of health, right? You can't say that that's nothing to do with health. Mental issues, stress, psychiatric problems, they are part of health, right? In the past, you would say, well, this is not medicine, right? It's nothing to do with me, go and find a social worker. That's not part of it. The air we breathe, China has improved significantly. I mean, if you have not, I've been here many years, and when I came early days, China was getting industrialization, right? It needs factories. You don't get that. This is clean air now, right? But many parts of the world, poor air quality, that affects, health significantly, right? So a lot of these things are there. So anyway, there are many challenges. I'll just share with you some of it, right? We mentioned one, right? This aging and chronic disease, right? You can see adults, right? I mean, 2020 was an inflection point. the number of older people exceeded the number of younger people for the first time. And it will continue to grow, right? That red line. Then look at diabetes. It's a very interesting thing. It's just part of GDP. You don't think about diabetes in kind of like underdeveloped countries because, you don't have that kind of sugar activity kind of thing. So that's very challenging, right? A very second thing is in China and many countries, it's that it is concentrated in a few regions. I'm an ophthalmologist, I'm an eye doctor. So yesterday I was at my clinic. I do clinic once a week. I don't see that many patients. I don't have enough time. I saw about 12 patients. How many of these patients, let me ask you, were from Beijing? Any guess? Sorry? Almost zero, correct. Almost zero. There were about 2. Right? And I was at a very famous hospital. If you want to, you should go there. Peking Union Medical College, 协和医院, all right? The best hospital, so-called best hospital in China. 12 patients, 10 were not from Beijing. So in other words, they came from all over the country. One patient tried to, what we call 挂号, means try to get an appointment with me. Waited from 3 a.m. In case you can't get it, it's like lining up for Taylor Swift concert, That's roughly what it is, essentially. In fact, someone said that it's easier to get to a Michelin star restaurant booking than to see doctors, essentially. That's the problem. So this is a challenge for many countries, essentially, right? Then I think cost, wow, that's a big problem. Now, I'm not here to talk to you about the economic situation. China and many countries are affected significantly, right? Sometimes we all wonder why. I'm sure young people say, our theme here, we're trying to be united in a diverse society, right? That's why you're all here. But many people don't think so. Many countries don't feel so, right? And they're breaking up the systems that's brought young people like you into a world where it is prosperous and is looking for common good. Now, if I win, you lose, it's a challenge. And therefore, cost is a problem. Many people, if you sit in the taxi, ask them about their lives. If you go to some restaurants, they are not doing so well, right? So how do we solve that, right? So money needs to go to support people. How are you going to pay for this? China is already like that there, right? You look at it, it's lower than Brazil. It's lower than Brazil, the cost. It's not talking about United States, which is the other extreme. So already China has pressures on trying to find solution for its healthcare, right? Can it add another 1% GDP? Maybe it can go towards Poland. It's going to cost a lot of money. So it's everywhere in the world we find challenges. And newer drugs are not getting into China, I can tell you, because it's expensive. And therefore, the China's FDA looks at it and say, if you add one more new drug, who's going to pay for it? It's a challenge, right? I think that we need to. So that's number 3. Then we have a problem with doctors, right? Look at this. Anyone from Germany or Sweden here? Anyone from Germany? Yeah. It's quite a lot. I have a lot of friends in Germany. I can tell you that their clinics are not like our clinics here. If you go to our German hospital, it's not like this, essentially, right? It's a challenge. So in other words, China doesn't have that. And the training program is long, very structured, and I'm trying to break it, essentially. Some very innovative medical schools in the US has shortened their MD program from 4 years, it's a graduate program, to 3 years. Because some of you here, do you need to know everything? You can get it from your phone, right? Why do you need everything? How long is China's medical school program? Anyone knows? Some of you from 8 years, right? Right, so by the time I train someone 8 years, whatever they learn in the first year is forgotten. And they feel that it's not enough. 8 years is not enough. Right? So in other words, instead of shortening New York, a few medical schools in US from 4 to 3 years, We have increased to 8 years, partly because it's not easy, right, in China, because you want to maintain quality, and you hope that 3 years you get quality education. If you have 3-year program, it means that the teachers and the students are a small little classroom. They teach every single thing. But there's a lot of wastage, and you can't do it for whole rest of China, right? How do you have, how many medical schools will be like Tsinghua or Beida? How many in China? You can't. Some medical schools train 10,000 students. So you add quantity when you have no possibility for quality assurance. And that's a challenge. So in other words, you have big problems, huge costs going up, and you don't have enough supply, essentially, right? And you can't do it, So in other words, if Tsinghua, let's say I start the program, which I came 3.5 years ago when we started, the first time I'm going to see my student graduate is another 5 years' time, right? Am I going to see the results of what that doctor is? Because we started a program 3 years ago. That's what it means. It's not that easy, essentially, right? So I think this is what it is. And then we think about some of the strength of China. You've been in Tsinghua. It's a fundamentally excellent university. You have many famous professors here, labs. There are few professors working on a Nobel Prize. I asked them before, I said, what's your aim, Nobel Prize? I'm like, wow. That's it. We are like, maybe you publish a paper, right? For us, normal humans, essentially, right? They are like, no, we are aiming for Nobel Prize. I'm beyond the stage of publishing paper. If you meet some of this, you should, learn a little bit from them, right? So in those fundamental research, China is not lacking. But what is lacking in clinical medicine, it is lacking, right? You look at the red line. Red is China, US. And therefore, the transformation needs to happen there. And I can't tell you how advanced China is. I mean, you know about electric vehicles. I'm sure you sat there. Some of you anyone from US? Let me just ask. Anyone from US? Okay. I mean, I spent many years in the US. I love the US. My children are born there, right? So I love the US. But what US will not get will be electric cars that are built now. Because it's a little bit weird, I mean, sometimes in China, you can't get Google and YouTube, am I correct? You struggle a little bit with that, right? US not going to get, and some people is going to travel out of the country and they say, what's happening? Why am I in diesel cars in US? Yeah. And when they go to Brazil, and when they go to Mexico, and when they go to Europe, and they see electric cars everywhere, and if they come to China, it'll be low altitude economy. Do you know what's a low altitude economy, anyone? What's a low altitude economy? Anyone? Never heard about it, right? This is normal economy, ground economy. High altitude economies, airplanes. Low altitude economies will be that space between the ground and the airplanes. The area of drones and that entire space around it. All right? So if you've not taken an unmanned air taxi, go to Guangzhou and take a look at it. That will be low altitude economy. And some people, I'm not sure, I hope it doesn't happen, some of the young people from US, one day, I'm sure actually there are other innovations, but I'm saying that electric cars here, it's a different ballgame. Anyone has gone to see electric car factories here? Anyone? Go and try to take a look at it. How many people work in those electric cars factory? How many people? Do you know? Almost zero. Fully robotic. Full robots, because built from ground. You go inside there and you look around and you see nobody. And the cars are being made like this, right? That's why when Xiaomi launched the SUV, are you aware there's a new SUV from Xiaomi? 10 minutes, 300 orders. They have no problems because they produce 300,000 orders in a month because that factory doesn't require humans. That's what's going to happen. So anyway, I'm just trying to tell you, these are things that are happening in fundamental, but you need to know whether or not it can And I'm saying this because there are many things China is doing well. The fundamental, the new economy, but in healthcare, unfortunately, I'm in that sector, it's lagging behind because it's a very complex structure. It's a very complex structure. Then we need to know about patient expectations. I've seen many people now, I'm sure you are aware, right? I mean, Chinese people, like other people, they can't expect things like, after a while, I cannot be waiting at 3 a.m. to see my doctor at 10 o'clock in the morning. Am I correct? It's not expected. You expect to go into a restaurant. I book that appointment. I go in. I sit in the restaurant. That's normal expectation. So there is a little bit of these things that I think is quite hard. And I think that we all need to understand this, right? So this is a hospital in China, one of the hospitals I work in. It's not taken from the internet. It's from my phone. A real situation. The doctor there talking to that patient, but the others waiting because there's not enough time, right? The hospital is going to close. If I'm not in the room, I have to go and find my appointment tomorrow, essentially. So if you have diabetes, what I've said, just don't take sugar. Please, enough, next patient. That's all. I'm not going to explain what's diabetes, you need to control your this and that. I'm sorry, there's no time, right? And this is a hospital in emergency room departments. So it's a big challenge. So in other words, the problems of China's hospitals and healthcare systems are significant and cannot be addressed with current changes. So we need to think. So in other words, therefore, if I cannot transform this, it's not my job to transform this. I can't, right? I'm not in charge of the country. I'm not the health minister. But I need to be able to provide a model for our young doctors to know how to do it. So if I train 60 young doctors, those 60s know what they need to do, right? That's kind of my aim. So in other words, the next section is what then do I think these physicians need to know? How are they going to solve all these problems? Right, so very simple, you've got to break it down. The first is you need to change your mindset, right? When I was a medical student and we had slow transformation. Basically, I was in an era whereby we do sequential learning. You know what's sequential learning? I learned what's a cell, and then a cell goes to an organ, and the organ is normal, and when the organ is damaged, it's a disease. Then I go from basic, I go to clinical medicine, sequential. It's quite a good model, essentially. And then I realized when I started practicing, which was around 2010, it's very different, right? I don't see a patient as made up of many cells, right? They live and they interact in a society, as we said, right? They have family members, they have specific situations, so it becomes systems, essentially, right? Teams. So you don't depend on doctors. If you go to a hospital, a modern hospital, they don't depend fully on doctors. You have the dietary person, you have the podiatrist, you have the physiotherapist, the people that's going to take the imaging, the radiologists, right? Of course, you depend a lot on nurses. They provide a lot of that gap between what the doctor says we can do and how it's going to be executed. So many things happen. So it's now become a team-based care. So in Tsinghua, we're even thinking, is training doctors enough? Probably not. Because you're only basically training one. If you're building a soccer team, right, Brazil knows this, you can't have only, the Brazilian team has a lot to catch up for many years now. I'm sure you're aware. I was in the era where they were, with the old Ronaldo, they're all playing well anyway. But now, Brazil has a lot to catch up. Argentina has done a little bit better. But nevertheless, you are building a soccer team. You can't just train the striker. What about the defense? What about the goalkeeper? So that is a team. But what is the future? The future, I'm not sure. I don't know what's the future. I only can think. All I can tell you is this. It's not just teams. It's not just systems. It's not just hospitals. You want to be able to maintain health in your home while you're sitting here. There's some thought, right? We spend a lot of time in cars. If you are in China, you understand what I'm saying. Sometimes I'm in the car for 2 hours. What is happening in the car? Is it helping me in my health? Probably not. But in the future, it could be. There will be therapy, there will be treatment, there will be diagnosis in the car. Can you imagine? Nothing to imagine, in your homes. So you don't have to go to the hospital. So there's a lot of thinking, and it needs to be happening with this AI revolution that we're all facing. So there's a lot of thinking about what it is, but all we know is that we need to do this. So there are a few shifts very important. The first and very important shift which China is doing, some countries are doing, is to move from disease to health. You know, it's a health system we are building. It's not a disease system we are building. Am I correct? All right? So it's quite important, all right? So this is it. In other words, we need our doctors to be trained in understanding the population. It's not the individual health. What affects the health of a country? Second, we need to understand that many non-medical factors determine health. China's aging population is not because there's a lot of cures. It's because the water is better, the food quality is better. I already mentioned the air quality is better. You got many more people thinking about exercising, walking, and so forth, right? It's about non-medical factors. So we need people that are involved. So we involve in Tsinghua. Many of our students have classes outside of medical school in the understanding the environment, in climate, in social science, in psychological sciences. The second is to think about this thing about digital, right? I already mentioned, you know, AI was not a word when I started. There's no such thing as AI, right? It was science fiction. But if we train a medical student here, and they practice 10 years down the line, right, roughly, I need to be able to make sure that they understand what is that, what they need to know about AI. Then we start thinking about this, right? Many people know about AI. They are a little bit afraid about AI. A lot of doctors are, in fact, afraid about AI, right? But these are things that they all need to learn, right? Large language models, informatics. So in Tsinghua, we emphasize a lot of AI education. I'll show you a little bit about that curriculum in a second. You know, there are a lot of thoughts about this. I don't know whether some of you, Jeff Hinton's from Canada. Anyone from Canada here? Anyone? Right. So Canada is a Nobel Prize person, right? And he mentioned this.
One question, if you may. What do you think is the most exciting work to come?
Okay, so, sorry. Let me start by just saying a few things that seem obvious. I think if you work as a radiologist, you're like the coyote that's already over the edge of the cliff, but hasn't yet looked down, so doesn't realize there's no ground underneath him. People should stop training radiologists now. It's just completely obvious that within 5 years, deep learning is going to do better than radiologists, because it's going to be able to get a lot more experience. It might be 10 years, but we've got plenty of radiologists already. I said this at a hospital, and it didn't go down too well, but there you go.
Yeah. So in other words, it's a lot of thinking. So in other words, AI is going to take a lot of, it's going to change how we train doctors and what type of doctors we need.
Right? One question.
So in other words, AI is going to be like this, right? It's not going to replace doctors, but it's going to replace doctors that do not know about AI. I can tell you that. Because I did say that I had 12 patients yesterday. Some of them I need to see because quite complex. But a few of them I don't need to see. So I hope to see 5 patients in the future out of that 12. Because AI will solve a lot of these problems. And some of these won't need to come to Beijing to see me. That's the reality. That's what we need to be able to train our medical students on. Then engineering. Some of you don't understand. Engineering is it's not far from medicine. It's kind of quite aligned. Many things are in based imaging, robotics, the implants, the tools. You know, when you have a heart problem and you talk about heart problem, when they do a bypass surgery for you, the materials, you don't take it from a plastic, You've got to create that material. The whole material science is made of polymers and nanotechnology, which I don't understand. They are all engineering based, right? So I think this is something that we are trying to do at Tsinghua, which is also one of the reasons why Tsinghua has to do medicine, because we are a very strong engineering school for this, right? Then I think, this is, we're very strong here. This is one of our professors. Neural-brain interface. Can you imagine a future whereby paralysis could be cured by thought, right? Because it's by thought, by brain waves. It's essentially physics. Brain waves, you capture it, you combine it into human actions, essentially. That's what we are going to be trying to do over here, essentially, right? Then I said, translational research. We need people that can speak both language, right? Scientists, doctors, know the two language. We need doctors that know this. We have many doctors that read textbook, and I say, why do you want to read textbook? Textbooks are 5 years ago. They need to create new knowledge. And that's what Tsinghua, we hope to do, right? A physician scientist, so a physician scientist would be, I guess you can say, I was trained in medicine, I was also trained in science, right? And I wake up in the morning, this morning I thought a little bit about science, thought about some of the things that I want to do. This afternoon I have my teaching with my students. Yesterday I have clinics, so I understand the problems, the clinical problems, but I also understand the science that needs to solve some of these problems. And we need a lot of this. This is not quite common. Many countries don't even have this, right? This whole idea that you need a dual pathway of physician-scientists, essentially. We don't have that, right? And then I think it's very important to bring it all back. It's not hard. Those of you who are considering medicine, those of you who are thinking about, I like the science of it, maybe I don't know what's medicine. Medicine is a very social skill. It is a skill whereby you talk to patients. Many times I have no cure for them. Out of 12 patients, I have some definitive cures for a few. Some of them I've told them, I can't do anything. Some of them are too late. Some of them we have no solutions, right? So medicine, in one sense, some of you are considering, it's a great profession because it combines the whole aspects of, what it mean to be a human, right? It's not just a learning, but the interaction, the ability to, to understand someone, for someone to share their problems with you, and for you to impact on their lives. And some of them, I have some patients that told me 20 years ago, thank you for saving my sight. 20 years, I haven't met them for many years because they don't need to see me anymore. It's a very rewarding profession, right? It's a very rewarding. So those of you who are considering or thinking about it, I do encourage you to think about it, right? So, okay, because of time, I'm going to have it a little bit faster, and unfortunately, I won't be able to share my own personal story. It doesn't matter. Some of it's on the internet. You can read it and so forth. But I'll share a little bit about Tsinghua Medicine, right? So Tsinghua started this journey quite slow, I would say, almost with the development of China. Fundamental, basic medicine, basic biology. And then when I joined in 2022, we transformed Tsinghua Medicine. And the way we did it is a simple thing. I do create a structure that was future-facing, that allows our students the best possible option to learn. Have a strategy, and then create a space. So we launched many different schools. I won't go into that, but just to share you what I'm thinking. Remember, I told you what we need for our doctors, right? So you need, number one, of course, basic medical science. Someone's going to have to teach the anatomy and the pathology. But you need biomedical engineering. We created a school to specifically cater for engineers that would meet clinical problems. There are many engineering schools here. This is one of the first medical school that has an engineering school under it, globally. You can go to any school you want to see. It's not that common. They're usually in engineering schools, but we made it to specifically support medicine. Then I said, of course, you have clinical medicine so that we can do our clinical things there. Pharmaceutical science, we need to discover new drugs, new therapies. And then we have healthcare management, all the things about the policies, about things outside of medicine, clinical medicine we need to do. So we were very selective in what we created, and then we have our hospital system supported. And this is how it looks like. And the idea is this: you're not joining the School of Medicine. It's not a school. Tsinghua Medicine is an ecosystem, right? It's multiple schools, and it has hospitals. We want you to join a system whereby you feel that you belong to different schools. I would love my medical students to work with the biomedical engineering teachers, and then also go to the healthcare management and understand the policies. And that's the structure that we created to build this medical system. And the idea is that it is not like this. This is a traditional medical school. It's a school that many countries would have. You finish school, you go to the hospital, right? We want research abilities. We want you to be able to go to our hospital in one ecosystem. So we built structures to support people after they graduate in our hospital system under one single ecosystem, right? That's what we want. And therefore, we are able to support people there. And therefore, we are also able to support what I said, not just a school, but a translational science that brings to social determinants, global health, and society, right? That's an ecosystem. Of course, we need people, we need faculty, and I'm trying to hire people inside this system. So our education system is really divided into two. A lot of you here will not qualify, and it's too late for you to join our undergraduate program. This is the standard 8-year program. But there's a possibility, if you want, to join our graduate program, which is a 4-year clinical program. We have a few international students, not that many. We hope to increase more. So they join with any degree in the undergraduate, they can join our graduate program, which is quite a standard program. The US program is like this. I mean, there's a word here, it's called 4+4. We don't use it anymore. Those people in China might know. Those people not in China won't understand it, but it's a graduate MD program. That's what it is, right? And we hope that during this place, when we said that we want to train people here, we have to build a curriculum now for them there. And that's what we're building. How do we build this curriculum? You could have a traditional hospital, like Xiehe, big hospital, a lot of beds, a lot of doctors, and a lot of people say, let's add AI inside, right? This is what people are doing, add AI, DeepSeek, ChatGPT, but we're not going to do that. Remember I told you about the Xiaomi electric car factory. How many people inside there? 0, right? I said, it's not possible to do it in a traditional car factory. That's also one of the reasons why, for Ford to do it. I'm sorry, Xiaomi has no legacy. It doesn't have to fire a single traditional car engineer because they don't have any. After they made the phone and the refrigerator, they just say, we just make a car. Right? So we will build a new AI agent hospital, which is what we're doing. Very small hospital, look at the light blue. Very few doctors, but better outcomes, better patients, right? That's what we do. We've kind of thought about it. This is the normal journey. I don't have time to go into. It's a very complicated journey, and we need to break down this journey. We've launched that hospital in April, right? And we hope to build on it. And the idea is to have clinics like this, right, where the doctor interacts with the multi-agent system, and we are able to triage people so that the doctors in the specialist clinic don't have to see the 8-10 patients. They're only needing to see fewer patients, and some need to be admitted, some do not need to. That's the idea for the AI. We have an AI curriculum, and we hope that our Tsinghua student knows not just the clinical side, but the engineering side. We don't need to know them to know all the AI, but they need to know sufficient. We have a lot of global partnerships. A lot of our students go overseas. These are people, some of our medical students that go overseas. We also have our culture that we're trying to build, right? And we try to train them after they've graduated. A physician signed this program. So that's kind of like what Tsinghua Medicine is doing. And Again, I wish I could share some of my own personal stories, but we have other opportunities, particularly for those of you who come and join us as full-time student in the medical faculty. I'll be able to see you. If you're joining Tsinghua, I'll still see you at various functions, opportunities, and as as one of the teachers in Tsinghua. So with this, I'd like to thank the organizers, our international affairs department, and also all the students here. I wish you an enjoyable, memorable, life-changing experience. And one day when you're like me and you say, like, yeah, I really went to that summer school. It's kind of altered a little bit of my career, my thoughts, and bring back a lot of friends and memories here. Thank you very much.